Well, this week we're going to be learning about line plots. Line plots are really just a type of graph for displaying information. And you guys have worked with graphs before. You know what they typically show. You know that they're visual and that they include lots of information. Line plots are a great way to show information that is typically given to us in numbers. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you do not have this page, it is actually on Canvas. If you are able to print it out, it does come with the answer sheet, but just put that away and focus on this first page. If you don't have a printer or you're not able to get, you don't have that capability, then just pull out your math journal and you're going to do this along with us. This week we're going to be working on line plots, and we're going to be doing two things with them. One is we're going to be creating them. So today we're going to be creating them. And then secondly, we're going to be able to ask questions using them. So I've got some questions on this page that we're going to be looking at, but I'm also going to ask some other questions because line plots are an awesome source of information. Once we know how to read them or decode them, really, then we can answer lots of information about things. All right, so in this lesson, we have Miss Smith, who's the music teacher, and she gave her students a 6-question quiz about famous composers. The list below shows the scores that her students received on the quiz. So let's take a look, and we just see a whole list of numbers separated by a comma. So what this is telling me is this is like I'm writing down all their scores in a row. I wonder how many students there were who took this quiz. We should be able to answer that by the end. All right, so I can see that her students scored everywhere from a 0 to a 6. And so one of the first things I do when I am creating a line plot is I identify what I'm going to be writing about or what kind of information I'm going to be giving. And in this case, I know that this information is about scores on the music quiz. So I'm going to title my line plot Scores on Music Quiz. It's really important to let everybody who's watching us do this know what this line plot is about. I'm also going to show that X is going to equal 1 student. And that's really important. That's my key. That's telling people that every time they see an X on this line plot, that tells them that that's representing one person. Now, down here it says axis label. Well, what exactly does that mean? Well, this is going to tell me what the numbers on my axis, this is my x-axis, what those numbers actually represent. Well, we already know that our x's are going to represent the students. So what's going to go down here on my x-axis is actually going to be the scores that they got. So I'm going to write scores students got. Now, if you're doing this in your journal, this is so easy to do because you're just going to draw a straight line and you're going to mark it with these ticks. Well, these ticks are going to show the scores, but how do I know what numbers to put down here? Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the scores that the students got. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify and circle the lowest score that was received. Unfortunately, that was a 0. So we had a student, the lowest score that they got was a 0. And then I'm going to see if I can identify the highest score, and the highest score is a 6. Now I could circle any of these 6s, it really doesn't matter. So the students got scores of anywhere between 0 and 6. I'm going to go ahead and label the others because I can see that these students, we had some that scored a 1. I don't see anybody who scored a 2, but I'm still going to put it down here because it goes in between 1 or 0 and 6. I'm going to write 3 because I do see some 3s. I'm going to write a 4 and I'm going to write a 5. All right, now here's where I have to start putting the data onto my line plot. So remember that an X is going to stand for one student. So I'm going to start over here and I'm going to start recording this data. And I can see that there is a 6 right here. So I'm going to come and I'm going to make an X right above the number 6. Because I've used this 6, and this is really important, I'm going to mark it off. I am done with that 6, so I'm going to get rid of it. All right, I've got another 6. I've got a 5, so this time I'm going to put an X under my 5, and you'll notice that I'm making my X's about the same size, and that's really important too, because when you look at your line plot, you're going to be able to visually see whichever one of these columns that we're making with X's is the tallest is going to be the one that has the most students who scored. All right. My next student scored a 4. And I'm just going to go through this list, marking off as I put an X. All right, this student got a 6. There's another 4. You can do this with me. Here's a 5. Here's a 3. Another 6. There's the 0. A 1. A 6 again. Got a lot of people who scored a 6. A 3. There's another 3. Let me make sure I mark both of them off. Another 6. And a 5. All right, so here I've recorded, and I can really see as a teacher, and by the way, I do this, I can see that I had a lot of students who did pretty well. A lot of students were up here on this upper end of scores. That means that they pretty much understood. I had a couple of kids who didn't understand what I was teaching, or what Miss Smith, I guess she could see that a couple of her kids didn't understand what she was teaching, but for the most part, everybody did pretty well. Now, we've got some questions that we want to use this line plot to answer. This question says, how many students scored exactly 3? I'm going to circle this word exactly because this is one of those key words that I've really got to pay attention to. Exactly means I've got to focus on exactly who scored a 3. Now, when I come over here, I'm going to say, all right, these were the scores. Remember, along the bottom, these were the scores that students got, and this is where a student who scored a 3 would go. And there are 3 X's, so 3 students scored a 3. How many students scored higher than 3? Wow, this time I'm not looking at the 3. I'm looking at everything that's higher than the 3. So I'm going to cover up everything that's 3 or below because scores 4, 5, and 6 are higher than 3. Now, if I want to know how many students that was, I'm going to count the X's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 students scored higher than a 3. So that's pretty good. She has a lot of students who scored higher than a 3. How many students scored less than 3 is my next question. Well, remember, less than 3 is going to be anything below 3. It's not going to include 3. So I'm going to cover up the 3, and I'm going to look at the X's below the 3, and I see 2. So 2 students scored less than 3. Now I can continue looking at this graph, or this line plot, to answer some questions. My next question says, what score did the highest number of students receive? This time it's talking about the highest number of students. That means I'm looking for the highest number of X's in a group. And I can see that right here. This group had a lot of people in it. There were, in this group, I can see so many X's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, there are 6 X's here, and those represent 6 students. And there are not any other groups that have this many students in them. So I can tell that this top group of students here scored a 6. All right, now there's other questions I could ask about this line plot. So I want you to think about this with me. I'm going to write this one in. How many students took the quiz? What do you think I would do to figure out how many students took the quiz? What do you think? If you said count all the X's, you're exactly right, because one X represents how many students, or it represents one student, and so all the X's represent all the students who took it. Let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 students took the quiz. Sometimes when you're being asked questions about line plots, you get asked a question like this. And it's got an interesting wording in it. I'm going to write it down here. How many students scored at least a 3? Okay, that word at least. That word at least means 3 or more. Now, you know, this week in science, we're doing some activities about Camp Don Lee. There are some simulated activities of things that we would typically do at Camp Don Lee. And what I have told you is that you have to do at least 2 of the activities. Now, does that mean that you can do 3? Sure. 4? Sure. You have to do at least 2. And that means you have to do 2 or more. So when I see this word at least 3, that really means 3 or more. So if I want to know how many students scored at least a 3, I'm going to be looking at how many students scored a 3 or higher. So I'm going to count that total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 students scored at least a 3. So remember, that word at least means 3, or in this case, 3 or more. In your science lessons this week, you have to do at least 2, and that means 2 or more. All right, today for your problem set, we don't have anything in your book because your book doesn't have this. So your problem set today is to practice online using a game. Please make sure you do it. It's really fun. It'll let you know if you make a mistake. It'll have you practice some more. Then you have an exit ticket that I'd like for you to do online. You'll have multiple attempts. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. And then you've got some optional homework and things like that that you can do. Tomorrow, we're going to do an interactive PowerPoint about line plots, about doing just what we did down here, where we are reading and interpreting line plots. So I hope you'll have fun with this week. Line plots are a lot of fun, and I want you to start thinking, what are some types of line plots that we could make? What are some questions that we could ask where we could have numbers that are part of our answer? I'll give you a hint. I've asked you guys to do a survey last week, and one of the things I asked you was to tell me how tall you are in inches. We could make a line plot about how tall the kids in the class are. We could make a line plot about how many pets you have, how many brothers and sisters you have, what month you were born in. We could do a ton of different types of line plots. So we're going to have fun with this. Good luck. And if you have any questions, as always, let me know. Thanks a bunch.